Hey everyone, my name is Joe Glymes, and today I'm giving this lecture. I was talking to Philip Taylor on this lecture on just introducing you to AutoHotkey and some of its main benefits and uses. Kind of give you a little background on it and a little background on me real quickly here because it is pretty relevant here. Let me get to the next slide. So I have a master's in market research. I spent about 20 years in corporate America using statistics and multivariate analysis. I've been very geeky, but I'm not a programmer, right? I am in no sense of the way a programmer. I've never actually even finished a programming course. Well, I guess my undergrad, right? That intro to kind of thing. But I don't have any formal knowledge in programming. And that to me, it's one of the most important points because when you start seeing some uses of what I've done with AutoHotkey, it's crazy that this can be done by someone who doesn't even know what they're doing. I do have a small company. I've been using it for about 10 years. I have over 700 videos teaching AutoHotkey on YouTube, and I've done 52 webinars. I have over 80 podcasts and 4 courses teaching AutoHotkey on Udemy and Skillshare and other sites. I have a full-time employee, a part-time, and a virtual assistant that help me get stuff done. My 2 employees are far better skilled at AutoHotkey than I am. But again, it's what's great is anybody can pick this up, right? So this is why one of the reasons why I love AutoHotkey. Just to start off, though, AutoHotkey is a free open source scripting program. It only runs in Windows. It was created in 2003 from Chris Mallet. It was an offshoot from AutoIt. And part of the name is kind of funny because everyone that uses AutoHotkey gets kind of annoyed that people think of it as really hotkeys, because initially that's what Chris really wanted to create, were hotkeys, and the people at AutoIt he was part of AutoIt. They didn't like it. He wanted to do it, so he created a fork. And then it turned into this really amazing tool. It does so many other things. It connects to Windows really, really well. I like to think of it as a Swiss Army knife for programming with Windows, because you can do stuff with Windows it really easily. I think other languages you can do them too, but it's so easy with AutoHotkey. I don't know why you'd pick up another language to do a lot of the stuff. The core language is very easy to read and to understand. It's not cryptic, so it's another thing why I love it. You can easily, this is one of the best things, you can right-click a script and compile it, usually in a couple seconds at the most, and it's an executable, and you can give it to other people that have Windows computers, and usually, more often than not, it runs fine. Also, it's great is that you don't actually have to install AutoHotkey. You can run it from a thumb drive, which is really handy. Now, before we get into AutoHotkey itself, I did want to talk a little bit about the RPA. I don't like robotics process automation terminology. I call it the virtual RPA. And that's because, it's software. And whenever you say RPA, people think about robots and they think, so you have robots doing stuff? No, it's a virtual robot. So, okay, so that's the software side of things. And what's really important here is to focus on, at the top end of the spectrum, there's this assisted RPA. And that means, usually you're hitting a hotkey or you're doing something, and then you trigger an event, and then the program will take over and start automating a process. A little bit lower in this is the unassisted RPA. And then even further down is the artificial intelligence / machine learning type of RPA world. So AutoHotkey fits definitely in this top one, somewhat in the middle. Now, I actually or I shouldn't say led because I participated in a webinar during neural networks with AutoHotkey, but that's not really what I would be using AutoHotkey for mostly. Now, there are other tools like Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere, UiPath. Those are also, probably you've heard about them. They also cost tens of thousands of dollars per license for a lot of the time. And the other big distinction there is they're all GUI driven. And so you don't write code, you use GUIs. And with AutoHotkey, you're writing code. And of course, you can create programs that even have GUIs. But it is a distinction because those other tools, sometimes you want to get something done really quickly, but you have to use these GUIs to get to where you want, and it can take you a while to do it. I'm not knocking them entirely because they're pretty robust tools, but often they're also doing more advanced stuff. Now, I'd say about 5 years ago, so as I mentioned earlier, I have a master's in market research. I had fielded a study, and I got 463 respondents of people using AutoHotkey, and I asked them, how are they using it, right? What's their most common usage? And as you can see, hotkeys, 82% said they use them for hotkeys. So basically launching other programs, other scripts, launching anything, or remapping a key. You can do a lot of stuff with it. It's really cool. Or creating GUIs, text manipulation, so like regular expressions or parsing text, sending mouse and keystrokes, remapping the mouse to do buttons, or automatically clicking on something when you find it, file desynchronization, hot strings. Now that we're going to show you, think of like Windows autocorrect when you type something out. Doing stuff with COM, a lot of programs have the Microsoft component object model in the backbone of it. And when it does, like let's say Excel or Outlook, and I'm going to have an example here in a bit where I demonstrate that, you can programmatically control that. So think of like VBA, right? But it's actually the COM side of things. It's very similar to VBA, but it's again built into AutoHotkey now. It didn't used to be. But it's great because you can programmatically automate things. And I have a list, I don't have it here, but there's about 17 different ways with AutoHotkey to programmatically control programs. If you dig into them, you'll find more often than not, it's really a far fewer list, but it's just that the developers have wrapped certain things with commands in AutoHotkey. And so like I just recently launched creating a GUIs course. And what's great is it's so simple to create GUIs, and you're using the Windows GUI control. So you're using the most robust control GUIs ever built, right? Never tested by billions of people. Yet with AutoHotkey, it's a couple lines of code and you can easily do this. People use them for gaming, for web scraping, DLL calls, registry editing, which is pretty awesome. And then a lot of other miscellaneous stuff. Here, I created an additive tree, and what an additive tree does is it will group things closer together on the tree. So let's see, what's the closest distance? Probably hot strings. This distance here, this is the shortest distance, or maybe this one is the shortest distance on the screen. And so that means the people who said they use hotkeys also use hot strings. And I know that because this distance is really short. So this is just giving you an idea of, hey, if you're doing some of these things, you're also likely to do the other things that are close to it. You can kind of get the feel on the level of advancement, I think, and usage in what people are doing with AutoHotkey. But I thought this was an interesting slide. I just thought I'd leave it in here because it gives you an idea of there are certain groups of people using AutoHotkey in certain ways. So as I mentioned earlier, hot strings, they're like text expansion or like the spell check on your phone, auto replacing stuff. Hotkeys, you can launch programs, files and folders. You can manipulate and move things around. You can automate, not just Outlook Office programs and Microsoft programs, but even SPSS and VLC, Adobe, they have a COM backbone often. And again, that's a programmatical way you can interact and control those programs. Web scraping is amazing. Now, I've done most of the web scraping with IE, but there is a class out there by a genius who has made it where we can now automate Chrome. And so it's really great because IE, of course, is dying, but we can still programmatically control Chrome. And I'm going to show an example here, not of the actual code, but why and how it's different than when you say web scraping with Python, right? And how we use it differently with AutoHotkey. Web service APIs, those to me, they are the things I love, probably one of the most, because so many companies out there now make APIs available to you, and you can connect to them like Google services. You can connect to them and programmatically query and get data out, send stuff to them, get data out. It's like web scraping, because web scrapings technically are API calls as well, except for the data is much smaller. It doesn't change. It's structured very clearly. So it's, and it's very light and easy to use. The hardest part is the authentication usually. After that, it's pretty easy. A lot of people create GUIs. It's very simple and easy to do. As I mentioned, regular expressions, and then manipulating audio and video and performing OCR. We'll have an example of that here in a minute. I did want to give a little more background. So you're probably familiar with PowerShell, right? Auto-its in here. This is what other tools people that use AutoHotkey have used. And so these are some of the closest competitors. What I found interesting in this was over a third hadn't used anything else. So a lot of people, AutoHotkey is really the main tool they use. They don't use other ones, but quite a few people have played around with other things. And if you've ever tried to program like with PowerShell, when you look at AutoHotkey's code, you'll understand why I'm bragging and saying it's so convenient, because PowerShell, at least some of the stuff I've worked with, it behooves you to be a programmer. With AutoHotkey, it's just much cleaner and simpler, and maybe in some ways it's not as powerful, but to me, you can do a lot with it, and yet it's not so complex of code. And who uses AutoHotkey? The vast majority of people, or well, over a third, I say, but the highest one was people working in IT, right? And engineering is another one. But you can see there's, after that, it's quite varied in who's using it. And so depending on where you're going, right, you might look at it and go, hey, you know what? This is a lot of other people that do what I do are using this. So, you know, I might want to check it out. This one will come as no surprise, but you know, 96% of the people that responded to the survey at least were male. And just FYI, usually males are less likely to answer a survey. And so this means it's probably even underrepresented for males, but it's not a surprise, right? The vast majority of them are guys. I'm sure we're all used to that because you go to class and all you see are guys. Okay, so before we get into that, did anybody have any questions? I know I cruised pretty fast there, but did you have any questions before we get into some actual examples? No?
If we could jump back to the slide that shows usage by industry.
Oh, this one? Oh, sorry, this one. Nope. Boy,
no, that one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I had job. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's job function. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I think that AutoHotkey has the most to offer to those people who are in like the 6.3% to 2% range. It gets used the most in the information technology group because, you know, it's a technical tool in its nature. But really where the benefit comes is helping people with the kinds of tasks that they do in consulting and accounting and sales and finance and you know, art and design. There are a couple of notable video production people who have been using AutoHotkey, such as Taryn from Linus Media Groups, who edits all the videos for the Linus Media Group. He uses AutoHotkey, you know, all the time.
No, I think it's a really valid point because when I worked in corporate America, especially my last job, Texas Instruments, I automated so much of my job, it was crazy. And then I started sharing my stuff. You know, I automated so much of my job, I was able to start writing programs for other people. And I'll tell you, I watched a lot of people that worked so hard, you know, to get stuff done, and I could automate stuff for them. Now, they sadly very few ever tried to pick it up themselves. But the usage, boy, they loved using the stuff, right? It was just they unfortunately, for whatever reason, don't pick it up themselves. But you're right, they definitely have the need, and I hope more and more people start learning. And it doesn't have to be AutoHotkey. AutoHotkey is a great, easy to understand programming language to step into. But if you want to learn another language, it's fine too, right? Find some way to automate what you're doing. AutoHotkey is a super easy language. Like I said, if I can pick it up, and I learned, like, basically, especially the object-oriented side of things and the web scraping and things, I learned by reading the forum. I didn't even have someone to ask questions to. And if you know, if I can do that, trust me, anybody can pick it up. Anything else? We're good. Okay, so let's get into some real world examples. So as I mentioned, there are hotkeys. And so like right now, I'm going to I have the apps key, which is for a lot of people, not everybody, but on the bottom right side of your keyboard, there's a control key. And between the control and the alt key is probably an apps key. So I have programmed my code to say if I hit apps key and V, it will bring up, of course, I did it on the other screen, but it brought up my display settings. And I did V because I have D for device manager. So if I hit apps key and D, it'll pull up my device manager, and apps key and N for my networking tab. So these are all simple things, you know, but if it's something you use a lot, then bam, I can pull it up in a second. I don't have to go try to find it. It's just one hotkey. I can hit it and there we go, right? So that's a great, easy one. Or I can have a shortcut like to a folder, which I think is Control Shift. Yep, it opened up on my other screen, but I have it where it runs and opens up a folder. And you can have it do almost anything you want, right, to have it launch something for you. Hot strings are, let's say, like for some person I know, Geek Dude, if I want to type Geek Dude, I do GD period space and bam, it'll throw in Geek Dude. Or if my email address, I don't have to be typing my email address, right? Or if I want my Gmail, right? I can have these short abbreviations and very quickly, easily pull up, this, but it could be like, let's say I have, let me make sure that this is set to AutoHotkey here. So LP2 period space brings up my loop template. So I think for programmers specifically, if you have templates of things that you use very frequently, these are great, right? Because they bring them up exactly how you need them, and you don't have to go find that template. And so I use hot strings a lot for just the really quick ones. This is my alternative to a message box. So I type MBA for, and again, we held a webinar last Tuesday, and someone mentioned something, and I totally want to steal this because he said something like, let's put the personal back in computers, right? Because it used to be the PC was the personal computer, and then now they really feel like computers. But to me, AutoHotkey allows you to make your computer personalized, right? Now it's tailored for me, and not just my preferences, but it's how I think, right? That's the beautiful part of it. I can adjust these hot strings or hotkeys or whatever to what makes sense to me, not to some programmer or somebody somewhere set this up and I have to memorize what they did. I can put them to how I want them. So yeah, it's a very easy one. Now, let's say I was a HTML programmer and I get tired of doing colors, so I can say see blue, period, now space. Now watch where my cursor ends up. So notice my cursor is back in between my tags, right? So I have a bunch of these. I have the letter C and then a color, and then it throws in the span tag for me and backs up and leaves me where I need to be to have the text I want. All right, so that's enough of hot strings. Wrapping text. Now here's one, and let's borrow from. Actually, you know what? Let's just do it with some stuff here live. Joe was here now. So what was it? Control-Alt-W. So let's say I was doing stuff online and I needed to right align this. I can hit Control-Alt-W, and it just took that text. It sent a control copy. It cut it and put it in the pasteboard, and then it wrapped it with my syntax for me, and then pasted it back onto this window. And the great thing about it is if I actually copy this, I think this one's set up this way. And so right now, let me show you. Now is in my clipboard. And if I do this, Control-Alt-W, great. But when I hit paste, now is still in my clipboard, right? And that's because I first backed up my clipboard, I did all my manipulations, sent paste, and then restored my clipboard. So you can build these little tools to help speed things along. Control-W, so I have another window here. This one, when I was working in survey research, I would program the survey and I would get it back, and these were my answers, but I would have to go through and get rid of everything from here over because it was the question, right? So what I did was, I'm trying to remember, Control-W. So I can highlight it all and hit Control-W, and it goes through, and basically I have a regular expression. So I'm going to undo this, and it looks for this a space, a slash, and then the word question, and it says, okay, well, take that and get everything away from the right of it. And this, would have taken me. The problem is this. See how they don't all. Oh, actually, this one it does happen. It looks like they all end the same. But before, some of them would get truncated. So even if I did a search replace, I couldn't just search replace for that one string because they didn't have exactly the same string. It was really problematic. So I wrote this just as a way of like, you know what, I want to clean this thing up, and bam, in a second I can do that. Another really helpful one is, let's say I'm in here. Now, you got to remember I wrote these years ago, but it'll still come in really handy. Let's go to Word. If I was to, hit paste, it's funny that for whatever reason it didn't bring in the colors, but you can see the bold, right? If I hit Control-G, it'll paste plain text, right? So, and I can hit undo, and I can still hit Control-V, and it's going to bring it back in. So again, I didn't replace my clipboard. I temporarily did. I stripped the formatting, and this was great because what I used to do is I'd be online and I would go copy some stuff and I'd want to paste it somewhere, but I didn't want the formatting, and I'd have to go through, like, paste it in a notepad and then copy again and paste it. Now things like Word and other programs, you can right click and say paste as, plain text, but it was a really, really easy way to not have to do that. My screen clipping tool, now this one's written in AutoHotkey. What's really nice is I can be in anywhere and I can do multiples, and actually I can even, like, I can go to the next screen, right, or up and down. And then when I'm done, I can just click here and get rid of it. Or let's say that this was an image, and let's say it wasn't text, but it was an image. I can hit a different hotkey and go like this, and you're going to see a flash here. So here is it did OCR, and it grabbed all that and put it on my clipboard for me. So I don't even have to go to another program, right? It'll do that. Or hopefully my Outlook is open. Yeah. I can do this and say, hey, Philip, I was talking to him. Oh, he didn't quite see it. So this automatically wrote me an email, and I have this set up in my script where it automatically has now this is the version for public, so I don't have my phone number visible to everybody, but it attached it as the image I just grabbed as the two different types, and it sets it up into an HTML email, and that was using COM with Outlook to dump it in there for me. So it's really, really easy. That was one I use that so many times a day. This next example, sending messages with text. So let me try to remember where this is. So Push Bullet is has an API. And so if you have an Android phone, you can automate sending messages through your phone. Now in here, I'm going to come down here and say, hi, first name. So I had to look at this header here, right? And if I also, let's say, now if I had 20 names here, right, I could come in here, I'm going to hit send. Now it's going to show me, hi, Joe, how are you? How are things in Capel? Because I have it do the very first example, it'll pop up here and display this before I send it. I can hit yes, and it's literally going to send that text. And in a second here, I don't know if it'll pop up in this screen. I think I have another screen, but I'll get that text. And so I can automate through my phone, sending, doing a mail merge. And this is, again, with the API for Push Bullet. But what's really cool is it actually sends it through my phone. So if I happen to be out, it goes through my phone, and I can look at my phone and continue that conversation. And by the way, this whole GUI here, this is all written in AutoHotkey. Okay, here's a fun one. So this one I want to show you actually a little bit of the script. This is an example. We're doing a couple things. I borrowed it from the actual webinar that I usually do for our AutoHotkey monthly webinars. And let me see, is it running? This little green H down here shows you if a script is running. Right now I see it's that one. I'm going to reload it just to make sure. Now, let's say I want to get my registrants. Now I created a fake meeting so it doesn't have everyone's PII, because otherwise I get in trouble, right? But if I hit Control I, it does an API call to Zoom. It said, get me all the registrants down here, actually here in this output window. By the way, this window, this whole program, AutoHotkey Studio, this is written in AutoHotkey, right? So Maestri had designed that. And I know Philip has his own that he's created too as well. Yeah, I'm guilty. I haven't used it, or not. I've used it, but I haven't gotten used to it. Anyway, here's all the information that my API call got, right? So it pulled in all this information. However, in here, let's see, here's my API call. I have it take that data, store it into an object, dump the entire thing to this output window. And then up here, somewhere up in here, I go and grab, where did it go? Oh, right here, sorry. I loop over the registrants, and I get their first name, last name. I'm separating with the tab, email address, and the date they subscribed. And I shove that into the clipboard, which is what I'm doing right here. And then I basically activate Excel. And I do a paste special. I'm in the lazy way. Normally I would programmatically set this because I don't really like pasting on average. But when I wrote this, I was just in a hurry. And then I froze. So here you can see, like if I scroll, I had frozen the top row. I colored it, right? I made it bold and I shaded it. And so all of that was right in here using some functions I have for Excel. And then this is the really cool part. So that was a real time saver. But to me, this is the really cool part. Now I can come in here and I can hit a different hotkey and it will do a mail merge looking for the first name, says, hi, Joe. Just a reminder, you've signed up for blah, 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 right? And it dumps everything in here for me. If I highlighted two, or if I highlight three of them, it loops over them and creates all three, right? So it's doing mail merges for me. What I love about this too, this is one of those points to try to explain the difference in how people use AutoHotkey compared to other languages. I love this because it can say, hi, John, and right here, maybe I would have a line. I can still interact with this thing if I want to and personalize it even more, right? So I have my template, I do all the stuff, yet I can still, if I want to, make some tweaks to it. Or let's say I don't want to do that, but I'm happy with my messages. What I've done is I come in here and say, hey, you know what? Let's set this to 0, and I'm going to reload my script. And now when I do it, I'm going to hit my hotkey, and here you'll see I have a little notification. It doesn't, so I could do all of these, and you'll see it's right now, it just sent those 4 emails, right? It didn't display them because, of course, when you have like 100, you don't want to go through each one. Yet I was just helping a company do a survey, and their sales team had to personalize the messages going to the respondents. And so by having it where it would pop up, they could still type a quick note, right? So what I love though is I'm actively interacting with the program, and it's not just a full-blown, program that runs off in, serverville, for lack of a better term. Okay, so that was that. This SQL Assister. So, not this one. Here, I have some, this is left over from when I worked at TI. These are like their parts. And I used to work in the database and email marketing team, and I would do targeting. Oh, that top one actually isn't a thing. But what I would do is here, let's notice here, here's uppercase, here's lowercase, and let's make sure there's some duplicates, right? So I can highlight it all and then pull up my menu and say, SQL. Let's say, let's do sort, uppercase, dedupe, and count. So I'm going to click this button, and it went through, it uppercased everything for me, and then it alphabetized it, and then it deduped it. So now there's no longer duplicates, right? So this was, hey, in a second, once I found it, it was easy, right? Or let's say I wanted to put this for an in-list query, and there's, oh, you know what? Let's, well, I won't have unique, so never mind. It won't go past 999. I built into it to automatically break them into groups of 999. But if I come in here and say in list wrapper, so it took that list and put it into a format. Now in my template query, I had the beginning quote and the ending quote. That's why I left them off here. But this is how I would then go run my query on all these things. Because if you haven't actually done this stuff in work, trust me, getting a list of things like this, or even a worse format, is very, very common. And then you have to run a query on it. And most people would do like, oh, I'll automate doing a search replace for a line break, this and that. Well, I did this stuff so often that this was just a really, really quick, easy way to clean it up. This is another great one where I was like, hey, you know what? Let's truncate it to, let's say, 4 characters. So it's going to truncate this to 4 characters and then dedupe it. So now I have a shorter list, and maybe I would use a star, and use a wildcard or something. But again, it's just whatever it is that you do, right? Sort by length. Oh, that was that one. So that sort by length was interesting. So it sorts by how long it is. But anyway, whatever it is that you do, right? It's really helpful. I think I have one here. Hopefully it still works. I haven't used it in a long time. I wanted to do, where's my, wrap with click-throughs. So we had a table where I had to look for anything with this, and basically it would take all that and write my, crazy query looking at something, anywhere this is anywhere in it. So again, It just depends what you do, right? And you can write a script that makes it really easy. So I can't even begin to explain how many hundreds of hours like stuff like this saved me. As I mentioned, AutoHotkey Studio, that's written in AutoHotkey. Here's one. Let's say, whatever programming language you work in, you get stuck on something. So I have it, if I hit caps lock S, right now, the default, I have it for these two, but let's do a couple other sites. Let's do all of them. Let's say we want to look for automate my task, which we'll show here in a second. I'm going to hit search. So I have pre-programmed, oh, of course it opened it up in the other. It goes to each of those sites. It uses Google. So if you look at it, right, it takes my term, and that was where, if I bring it back up, oh, that's funny. I just, there we go. So this right here is what tells it to say, do you want quotes around this or not? But more often than not, I want to look for exactly that. Sometimes I don't, but I can easily turn it off and say, well, I just want to look at one. And this way I don't have to worry about it. Oh, it looks like I got or I have another instance of it running, but you get the idea. So again, it just depends, what you do, and you can adapt it to anything. Now, the automate my task, this is a fun example. I'm going to launch it here. Now, let's say you didn't have a COM object that you could connect to, so you need to automate pushing this button. I can be in here. I'm going to hit F1, saying, what do you want to look for? I want to look for that. Move away. Now, let's say I want to display matches. Oh, look, it found it. And there was only one. If we saw more of them blinking, that would mean like, oh, I can adjust the index for which one I'm going to click. And now I'm going to test it with an actual click. So I'm going to send a click. And there, it just clicked. It went over and clicked that. But this tool, all this tool is to help write my AutoHotkey syntax. So if I hit export, this is the syntax that now I can come into a AutoHotkey program and paste it and then run it, and it will go do those clicking or sending text or just finding it and letting you know it's there. Just depends what you want to do. But it's I love writing things that help me write code. It just saves even more time. Now this tool, this menu you're seeing here, it's actually a tool called Quick Access Pop-up. And so, as I mentioned, I have like 700 videos and posts on my website. And so let's say I'm on a video. Let's get to an editor here. And someone mentioned something about GUIs. And so I want to cite my Intro to AutoHotkey, Intro to GUIs course. So here I can say, oh, you know what? Let's see, that's under posts, Intro to GUIs. And I have it predefined. So this is actually, it's a pretty link. So it's a redirect. I could say this would be like, for my tagging. But the point is, I have those at the touch of my fingers, right? And Quick Access Pop-up, it's actually written in AutoHotkey, but it's not even written for people in AutoHotkey. It's really written for people that like Philip mentioned earlier, that just use computers a lot. They need to have shortcuts to folders and files or websites, or little snippets of code, right? Which is how the main way I use it. But you can actually even interact with it. If I wanted to hit open here and I hit under my folders, let's say I want to go to my Excel folder, it detects, oh, actually, that's funny. It didn't for some reason. I'll let Jean know. Usually it detects that this is a dialog box and it will navigate in that folder for you. But yeah, it's a great piece of software. Just another example of AutoHotkey. Now the last one, which is what I mentioned earlier, is to help explain how, at least with web scraping, it's different. When I worked at TI, I of course was one person. I had 60 clients that reported to businesses, and they were trying to target customers based off of certain products that they had visited. And our web page tool for how to target was a total mess, disaster. And of course it was in SharePoint. I didn't have an easy way to change it, but I got this idea. What if I allowed people to use IE, navigate to a page, adjust, they can come in here and change this. This updates the products that are seen, and then hit a button, and it would go and grab all of the part numbers that were needed for that targeting. And so this, when I wrote the script, which I don't have, I didn't test it. I don't know where it is right now, but it would go and get what I needed for targeting because that was listed in this page. Yet you would never do something like this in like Python, at least I wouldn't. What's great is you're interacting with an active browser, or I could have it, log me into a web page, or extract data from it. But this one, I'm extracting data, specific fields from the page, and yet it allowed other people to just come in here quickly, use the web page, which has already done a lot of stuff, right, to adjust the products that are visible. Sure, all of this could have been done with programming, but it would have taken, probably like 100 hours or more to create a tool. And even then, how would you get it displayed properly, right? That's even a lot more time. And here I'm like, let's just use the browser. It's already there, right? And people are familiar with it. And then they hit a button and give me the results. It's that easy.
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment to step back and talk about why you're using Internet Explorer.
Yeah, good point.
Which is that when Microsoft built Internet Explorer, they built it in the same way that they've built their products like the Office suite, integrating that component object model API into it. So any aspect of Internet Explorer can be controlled programmatically from any other external program using that component object model API. So when you're using something like VBScript or AutoHotkey, you can grab information from Internet Explorer just as easily as you would grab any information that was native to AutoHotkey. And this is as contrasted to other browsers like Chrome, where you can grab information, but to do so requires a lot more complicated code on your part. And you have to do a lot of translating with JavaScript, and it becomes really hairy really fast. Whereas Internet Explorer, it was designed from the ground up to support this kind of automation.
Yeah, and let me get to this blank page here. So let me launch my other script. So I have a web scraping syntax writer, because it's so easy. So I'm like, oh, I need to create an IE object. Right, here's my way. I actually have it create a pointer to the IE object and make it visible, and then I can turn that off if I don't want it. But then I want to get from a page, if let's say there's an ID, but you can see the syntax, it's so easy. It's so simple. Like I said, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Now, as Philip was mentioning, in Chrome, this is possible too, but it's just not as simple, right? He actually worked through some videos with me, teaching me, and the problem is that I haven't used it in a while, so I couldn't remember all of it. But it's not usually like, because you have to use JavaScript in the background, right? That you're programming in JavaScript often is the thing, which is still fine, because it's honestly JavaScript isn't that tough either, but it's just not as easy as with IE. So yeah, that was what I had covered, presented. I don't know if you have anything else you want to bring up, Philip, or?
Is that the end of the slide deck?
It is. Well, I mean, I had a couple other slides that in case, let's briefly touch on. So this was the company industry. The high tech was, way up there by industry. This is still the survey that I had conducted. This one, I did think it was important to mention is years of work experience. Half the people that at least took the survey had been working for over 10 years. So I think there's a perception that AutoHotkey is used by noobs and young people that don't know what they're doing. But I think it's a better example to say it's that they're not used to programming, but they're not necessarily young kids, right? They have a lot of experience. This, I don't know if it'll be interesting to the audience, but it was interesting to me to see the other languages that they were familiar with. And so again, JavaScript was right up there, right? It's the most common other language. And then I did an additive tree on that, which this one, just because the nature of your audience might find it interesting. Now you got to keep in mind, these are AutoHotkey people that answered my survey, but
right.
You get an idea of, I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you see how the stuff is grouped. And Python is out on its own, which is just really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of very helpful statistical information that you've collected here. It really says a lot about how people are using the tool and even potential ways that it could expand in market share, places where AutoHotkey could see more usage. We still have a bit of time left, so I think it might be good if we could try a quick programming exercise with AutoHotkey. Creating a script that demonstrates writing hotkeys, writing hot strings, some of the simple commands like send and mouse move.
Sure. So actually that right there, by the way, was another one that I always forget I have, but I don't want to have to remember how to comment out or what to comment out. And you know what I didn't mention also was AutoHotkey can be context sensitive. So if this realized I was in Python, it would have used a different thing at the beginning of here. Or if it realized I was in SQL, it would have put like, was that 2 dashes, I think. So it can be context sensitive, which is really, really helpful. So you don't have to remember all these different things, right? It'll take care of it for you. But let's do a simple hotkey. So there are 4 main modifier keys in AutoHotkey. So this is control, the pound sign is Windows, the I did that, exclamation point is Alt, and Shift. So yeah, is the whoops, I did it out of order, but is the plus sign. So those are the 4 modifier keys. Usually you use those in combination with something else. So if I wanted to say control, of course, controls are bad because they're used in so many programs for an accelerator key, but let's just use it. So control G, and we want to run Notepad.
I'd like to take a second to talk about the theory of it, relate this to other languages that people might have seen. AutoHotkey is kind of a mix between JavaScript, C++, and BASIC. And so what we're doing here is we're creating a named subroutine. And because we've given it 2 colons instead of 1 colon, like you might see in the BASIC language, AutoHotkey parses that not only as a subroutine label, but it automatically registers a hotkey by that name. So when it picks up on the code, when it loads up, it's going to register that hotkey, in this case, Control G, and associate it with that line of code that's been placed there.
So yeah, thank you, Phil. I'm gonna hit Alt R, which is a shortcut. Now notice down here the little green H showed up. That means it's still running. And if I didn't have this hotkey in it, it would have actually exited the script, because you need something to tell it to stay persistent or tell it to be persistent. So now when I hit Control G, it launched Notepad for me. Ta-da! Let's say if we wanted, let's do a hot string. Let's say colon JG period. Yeah, I don't, for Joe Glymes. So let's say I'm often, I'm so full of myself. And so I want to be able to have a hot string to pull it up. So if I type JG, oops, period, space, it will swap it out for me. Now, that was a little risky, by the way, doing it in Studio. AutoHotkey Studio, ironically enough, doesn't really like hot strings a lot. It still did work in this case, but it works in almost any that, and I didn't mention that. I have right now, I have a script running in the background with over 4,000 words in a spell check, kind of like what you just saw, right? So in every Windows program, whether I'm in like that push bullet thing I showed you or anything, instant messaging or in Facebook Messenger, in a browser, when I'm typing in Windows, it's running, and it would actually do the spell check for me in every program I'm in, which I think is just insane. Was there, what you said, a hotkey, a hot string, or you want some other stuff? What were you thinking?
Yeah. multi-line hotkeys is probably a good point to hit on. So in the case of the hotkey that we've written above, we gave it one line of code. And by putting that line of code on the same line as the hotkey declaration there, it just runs that one line of code. But if you were to move that code down below the hotkey declaration, it starts execution at that point the same way a label would in any other language. And at that point, it continues execution down until either it reaches the return command or it reaches another hotkey declaration.
Yeah. So here, I needed to add this return. Otherwise, if we had, you know what? Let's do that with it. So if I don't have this, I'm gonna relaunch it. Now, when I hit Control B, it ran those two things, but when I close it, you'll see there's this message box here, right? And that's because it kept going, as Philip mentioned. It didn't stop. But if I put this return in and I relaunch it, now when I hit Control B, it launches the two, but I don't get that message box.
Yeah. And then if we would for a moment open the AutoHotkey help file. So this is the AutoHotkey help file. Joe has it here in the night mode. So all of the colors are inverted from normal. But what this file is an offline version of all of the online documentation for the language. A lot of people, when they pick up AutoHotkey, they say that this help file here is like the crown jewel of programming.
It is so good. It really is. And the other thing, which you may not notice at first, but at the bottom of every one, you'll have working examples of the thing you're looking at. And so I think I told Phil, I'm really lazy. I don't read anything, right? So I'll get it, and then I go to the example, and I'm like, what'd they do? Okay, and I'll try it real quickly. If I can't figure out, then I'll actually go read something. But the language is really simple. So usually it's just a matter of taking a look. Oh, I forgot an extra comma, which also, by the way, that first comma, I don't know if you want to explain that, but it is optional.
I don't think there is an explanation. It just is optional.
Yeah.
So this file has a listing of every built-in command of the language, of which there are, what, like 200? What would you say, Joe?
I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot.
And so it talks about every command, how to use it, why to use it in some cases, all of the things you would need to know for exceptional cases. As Joe shows, it has examples, and you see right above it, it has related commands.
Right.
So if you're just kind of browsing through looking for something, but you can't quite hit on it, more often than not, it'll be in the list of related commands, what you're looking for.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing we should mention is the forum, which is an amazing place for, you know, which I know there's a couple other forums, but this is the quote unquote the AutoHotkey forum. And you can go here and ask for help, and there are amazing people there. And then there are tutorials and working scripts and functions. And yeah, the content that's on this site is crazy, right? There's so many examples. And the people are so helpful. It's such a resource. It's amazing.
Yeah. So,
and then there's of course a Discord and a Reddit that have live people helping as well and hanging out, right? It's a very strong community.
Yeah, that's another thing that people hit on a lot, is they're attracted to AutoHotkey because of the people who are excited to help them learn. I've seen a lot of communities online, especially programming communities. You'll see on Stack Overflow, somebody asks a question and the top response is, you know, why are you even doing this?
Right.
You should be
Yeah.
doing this other thing, and you look and that other thing isn't even, related to the first thing. Or they'll be really terse and brusque, and you just come away thinking,
Right.
why would I want to use this platform, use this tool, if the people who are supporting it clearly don't want me to be using it, right? But AutoHotkey has been just completely the opposite of that in my experience. You come in, you ask questions, and you get good answers. You don't always get the right answer off the bat, but that's because everybody's learning. It's a big community of people who they just want to get better at their work, or any of the other number of use cases for AutoHotkey.
Yeah, I also pulled up this. This is on my site, but it's just a good reference to me. I combine like virtually everything that has sizable, help. There's the documentation, then there's a list of commands and list of keys. What's great is there are on the AutoHotkey forum. These are sub forums in different languages. So if English isn't your primary language, you can check a look at some of those. As Philip mentioned, there's the Stack Overflow, super user. There's some good libraries on GitHub. There's the subreddit on AutoHotkey, Discord. There's still an IRC. There's some YouTube channels. So Jack Dunning, he has a blog which has books in AutoHotkey. Mostly you can get them and order them and print them out, or what's the Amazon Kindle? You can get them as a Kindle book. This 1 hour software, I think at times it's not there anymore, but it had really great, easy examples, very compartmentalized. And there's a couple LinkedIn groups. If that's the other thing I'd say is not only join the group, but really more importantly, add AutoHotkey to your resume, right? Your stuff on LinkedIn. It's just good to have it there. There's some big Facebook groups. Here's the Wikipedia. I guess I got to add my last Udemy course. Here's a bunch of different tutorials. Actually, it's funny. I have Jack's. I have the Amazon stuff. That's what it is, and some merchandise. Which, yeah, if you're really interested, you can get a AutoHotkey water bottle. Anyway, was there anything else you could think of?
Yeah, before we kick off here, it may be worth looking at the Google Trends data for AutoHotkey, because I think there's some interesting insights to be learned there.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they hear AutoHotkey and they don't recognize it, or they think it's something else, or they think that it's just some small thing that they don't know. But I think if you search, AutoHotkey, AutoIt, and then the third language I think that's important here to search here is Lua, the Lua programming language. Lua is fairly ubiquitous in the industry. Instead of search term, do programming language.
Oh, sorry. How do I change?
Just get rid of the search term there. And search again, programming language.
Oh, so type programming language?
No, the term Lua, and then it gives you a couple different options.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see that. I was just going too fast.
So looking here, and also if you extend it, to the past 5 years even, see that AutoHotkey in popularity is actually staying relatively close to Lua. Now, granted, it's still a ways to go, but I hear people, they recognize Lua. As a language. It sees a lot of use for like embedding in other programs, and all of these like real programmers, they've heard of Lua, they know Lua. Well, here we have AutoHotkey. It's about as half as popular as Lua, but among the people who've heard of Lua, and I'm sure that includes most of the people that this talk is targeting, I would reckon that half of them haven't heard of AutoHotkey. And I think that that's something that needs to change. Not necessarily because I think AutoHotkey is some great end-all be-all tool, but because the things it offers to people, those kinds of things can be offered to these, hardcore programmers as well.
Yeah, when I about 8 years ago, I was learning Python, and here in Dallas, we have a really big. There was like 300, people that belonged to the group, but once a month we'd have meetings and have like 60 people actually show up, right? And so every person I talked to, after I got to know them, I'd say, "Yeah, well, you mainly use AutoHotkey," and literally every person said like, "Oh, I've used that before," and I'm like, "Wow, really?" Like it, and I don't know, maybe it was just a little bubble here in Dallas, but I was really surprised that every person I mentioned, they're like, "Yeah, I've played with it." Um, and also, by the way, at that time I was trying to learn GUIs, and so I first tried in AutoHotkey to create GUIs, and I'm like, "Oh, AutoHotkey is a great language, but their GUIs, yeah, it's really that they did a poor job." And then I started trying in like Python and in Kivy and tkinter, and I realized, and then I actually asked the Python meetup, I'm like, "Hey, I'm trying to do these GUIs." I'm like, "Oh, I don't program in GUIs," and I realized GUIs and AutoHotkey aren't hard. They're actually very easy. It's just that GUIs themselves are very different, and most people don't program in them. And honestly, in AutoHotkey, they're so easy. It's crazy. And you're actually driving, of course, which is something we should have mentioned earlier, is so much of what you do in AutoHotkey isn't really AutoHotkey source code, right? It's AutoHotkey wrapping windows to do stuff, right? So it's just an easy way that allows me to do stuff I never could do, because I'm sure not going to program in C or C++ or whatever, at least not in this lifetime. But yeah, it's a great way to access some really robust code, and yet you don't have to spend hours studying it.
I think that's a good note to kind of end on, unless if our audience member has anything he'd like us to bring up.
Oh, he's good. Cool. Well, thank you, man. This was fun.
Yeah,
And
thanks for.
You bet. Yeah. Hopefully, everyone saw this. Did I have? I don't think I had at the beginning, but I'm happy to add it here in case we have questions. That's my email address. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to to try to help out. Especially, I've done this for probably now at least 100 people, maybe more. Of like, if someone actually has some interest, I'm happy to have like a one-on-one and just helping getting started, right? Because sometimes that first getting started, it can be, especially if you're not used to programming, it can be, tricky. And having someone help just direct you and give you some quick feedback saves hours of time.
Yeah. Thanks for coming to talk to us, Joe.
You bet, man. Have a great day. Thank you.